the left isn't happy just to overturn our constitutional system of government through the illegal removal of the President of the United States. They've got a lot of irons in the fire in attacking our system. And one of the irons in the fire is undoing the Electoral College, which is the result of a compromise among the Founding Fathers to ensure the Constitution was enacted and set up. And the compromise was, how is it you take, and this was obviously only one aspect of the various compromises between the large and small states of the original 13 states and colonies, is how do the small states protect their sovereignty and not be overwhelmed in a new constitutional system by large states? One of the ways you do that is through the Senate, where every state, no matter its size, gets 2 senators. The other compromise is the Electoral College. The presidential campaign is not a national campaign. It is a campaign among 50 states and the District of Columbia. The electoral votes are the states. You win the state, depending on how the states allocate the electoral votes. It's usually winner take all. There are a few states where it's not. And you need a sufficient number of electoral votes as a result of victories to ultimately become president. So in many ways, your vote in November is just the first step in the presidential, in the step to elect the president. Now, the left hates this recently because 2 presidents, it's happened 5 times that a president has lost the popular vote but won the Electoral College vote and thus became president. It happened with President Bush, and it happened with President Trump. So that even before President Trump won the election without supposedly winning the popular vote, the left has been pushing for what is called I want to name it appropriately or get it accurate, the National what's it called? The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. So what the theory is, when a state, and this is according to, I think, the National Conference on State Legislatures. So when a state passes legislation to join the National Popular Vote Compact, it pledges that all of the state's electoral votes will be given to whichever presidential candidate wins the popular vote nationwide, rather than the candidate who won the vote in just that state. And these bills would take effect, or the laws would only become meaningful, only when the states with a majority electoral votes have passed similar legislation and joined the compact. So what that means is, until they get those sufficient number of states, there's no change in the way electoral votes would be allocated. Now, this is a threat to our constitutional republic. That's not the way the founders set up the system. That's not the way the Electoral College is supposed to work. I mean, you can think of the number of objections to that. Imagine, let's say, living in a state like, well, let's say you're a Democrat living in New York, and the popular vote, and New York goes to the Democrat candidate, as it often does, but the popular vote is won by the Republican. Well, your state's sovereignty and your vote means jack, because all of those electoral votes, despite who you voted for, from your state, would go to the Republican. Because Republicans in other parts of the country voted or independents, whoever, voted in large enough numbers to override your state's sovereign decision through its voters to vote for the Democrat. Now, truth be told, Democrats want this because they want to use that exactly as I described. They do not want conservative states like Texas and Florida, or nominally conservative states like Florida, because it can go either way, obviously, all those electoral college votes in not conservative states in the heartland and elsewhere in the Southwest and wherever, I mean the Southeast, to overcome their huge popular vote margins that liberals are able to get in states like California and New York. So in essence, it would undo the compromise that our founders initiated, or that was resulted in our Constitution. I mean, small states signed up based on this condition that their rights and sovereignty would be protected by the Electoral College. They want to undo that. These leftists behind this, and so now that Trump has benefited from the Electoral College, they really hate the Electoral College. So it would give an outsized influence to these big liberal states, which is what they want to secure their presidencies for world without end. And obviously it would make it easier or more significant. It would make voter fraud even more tempting than it already is, because you run up the numbers with voter fraud, because it's all about getting the popular vote numbers. It's not about winning elections in various states. It's about just getting votes, no matter where. So undoing the Electoral College, in addition to the unconstitutional nature of it, because the real constitutional question is whether the states can just decide to undo the Electoral College this way. It would encourage voter fraud and really just undermine our elections. Because the wonderful thing about the Electoral College is, look, there are states where candidates don't have to, and this is only for presidential candidates because the Electoral College only applies to the presidency. Democrats don't have to really campaign much in California. They go and raise money because California is seen as a solidly Democratic state. And there are similar Republican states. So the wonderful thing about the Electoral College, it requires the candidates to go to smaller states because every Electoral College vote counts. So places like Iowa get attention, New Hampshire, New Mexico. States with 1, 2, I think the minimum is 3 Electoral College votes. I don't know if each state has 3 Electoral College votes that I just named, but you get the picture. So it ensures that regional interests and state interests are at least acknowledged during the campaigns. That's the genius of our Constitution, and the left hates it because it gets in the way of their power, their quest for power. So in Colorado, Judicial Watch is working with a reporter for not the Daily Caller News Foundation, the Free Beacon, Washington Free Beacon, Todd Shepard, great reporter. Colorado passed this voter bill, this Electoral College attack. It was signed by the governor. The Secretary of State applauded it. And I want to read the statement Secretary of State Jenna Griswold put out there when when her governor signed this law. The Secretary of State, I'm guided and inspired by the principle of one person, one vote. Well, we don't have one person and one vote in our country. I just told you the Senate isn't one person and one vote. We're a republic. We don't have one person, one vote. The national popular vote upholds this principle, and she misspelled principle. She said Principal. Should be PLE, right? And ensures that every citizen's vote matters equally regardless of geography, race, income, religion, or gender. And then she applauds the Colorado legislature and the governor for putting the voters of Colorado second to the agenda of the national left. But I'm going to read that again. Regardless of geography, race, income, religion, or gender. That's kind of loony leftist talk. This is a crazy identity politics that has nothing to do with the Electoral College. Nothing to do with the Electoral College. I mean, they suggest our Constitution is set up to attack people. The Electoral College is set up to discriminate by geography, race, income, religion, or gender. That encapsulates the left's approach to our system of government and our constitutional republic. And so Todd Shepard, the reporter, asked the Secretary of State for documents about her involvement in this process. Per usual, they objected, didn't want to turn over documents, so we're suing Colorado State Secretary of State for these documents. As I said, leftists in Colorado and other states want to undo the Electoral College and the U.S. Constitution in hopes of guaranteeing control of the presidency. The attack on the Electoral College would give outsized unconstitutional influence to the large states and encourage voter fraud. It's got to be stopped. So we have joined the battle with this initial Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, or the Colorado equivalent of it. This is a state election open records lawsuit. I think it's the Colorado Open Records Act. Not all the corruption and secrecy, illegal secrecy, is going on here in Washington. We're in the states, Judicial Watch is, trying to protect the Constitution. And we are concerned about the integrity of our elections. They want to make elections. The goal of the left is to make elections meaningless. They don't like it that they don't know what an election result's going to be. That's why President Trump horrified them. They thought they had it in the bag. So how do they do that? Well, they got to fix the system. And I mean fix in the dishonest way. Undo the Electoral College so they can run up numbers through fraud in places like California and Illinois. Attack voter ID, the few places where it's a strong element in election security. Make sure it's not passed anywhere else so they can steal votes if necessary. Keep the election rolls dirty so they can use names to vote illegally. Oppose citizenship verification to allow aliens and foreigners to more easily, illegally vote to help them steal elections when necessary. That's the left's agenda. That's what Judicial Watch opposes. And that's what our litigation and investigations and our educational activities are about. And I can tell you, it is, I'd like to say David versus Goliath, but I think Judicial Watch is a bit of a Goliath these days. So we're taking it on. But the left has dozens of organizations, obviously elected officials, powerful public government officials, allied against us. But we're doing a pretty good, darn good job taking them on and holding them to account. Suing in Colorado, I told you previously about the victory in California, where we settled a case that is going to result in California removing up to 1.56 million inactive voters from their dirty election rolls. Successful defenses of voter ID and promoting the rule of law in our elections. Like I said, we're Goliaths in doing that work.